Well, hello, Endow ladies. Simone here, Director of Program Growth, and I am with Samantha Povlock from Femme Catholic. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
So happy we're finally having this conversation, Samantha. I don't know what you like to be called, Samantha or Sam, on a podcast.
I sent on my email Sam because I'm lazy, but Samantha's great.
Okay, great. Well, I would love for you if our listeners haven't heard of the incredible organization that you are founder and CEO of, Femme Catholic. Give us a little taste of what Femme Catholic is all about, Samantha.
Sure. So Femme Catholic is a media company platform where we have a blog, almost daily posts, and then video talks, a little longer than TED Talks, but a lot of different content. Simone here has a talk that she did for us last year that's very good. But we're trying to speak into the lives of millennial Catholic women because the millennial women are different than any generation before. They're more educated than any generation before. They're waiting longer to get married and have kids. And, a lot of women are spending their 20s, if not their 30s, going to college, getting higher ed degrees, working, building careers, and really, using their gifts in the world. And there's just a lack of conversations around like integrating their faith with their real lives. And so Femme Catholic's really trying to speak into women's lives and integrate faith in that.
Okay, so yeah, check out Femme Catholic. I will definitely link to it. Love everything you're doing over there, Samantha, especially because, as we were talking about before, it seems to me that there are conversations about what it means to be a woman and a Catholic that are happening over at the Femme Catholic side that I don't see happening in other kind of pockets or areas in the church world. So I commend you for the work that you're doing and for the community that you are building and trying to build and grow. So well done there. Well, today, as you know, I made you choose because Endow mobilizes women to study church documents, recognizing the prophetic value of the church and of the writings of the saints and the popes and the church documents. I know it can seem kind of rigid and stuffy sometimes, but actually they change lives, they transform lives. So the document that you chose, I was so happy you chose it because nobody else has ever mentioned it to me, which is on the collaboration of men and women.
Yeah,
which was put out by John Paul II. But Ratzinger has his name on it when he was prefect for the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. So Sam, why did you choose that document?
Well, I mean, there's so many great quotes in here. And, but part of my story was growing up really having this feminist bone in my body, but also being raised in a really solid Catholic home. And it was something that I always sort of had tension around, just not seeing how they fit together until I went to college and started actually reading the source documents, Letter to Women, Mulieris Dignitatem, Edith Stein. And I think the church has written so many deeply beautiful and insightful things about women that really you could pull some of these quotes and think that they're from like a secular feminist source. Right. And that was so healing for me because I had this sort of surface understanding of what it meant to be a woman or a Catholic woman, or what the church said, what it would mean for me to be a good Catholic woman. Mm-hmm. And just realizing what the church actually teaches is awesome. So I love this letter because it talks about the importance of male and female, differentiation, which is something that Catholic scholar and lawyer Erica Bakioki talks about. Mm-hmm. The sexual asymmetry between men and women. We have these different bodies, which, I mean, frankly, in today's world is a pretty radical concept. Right. And it's important. And then this letter talks about the importance of feminine values to society. And that, women are not just supposed to be mothers. In fact, in this letter, they talk about how, the church's emphasis on virginity, which a lot of times I think secular groups will say, oh, Christians and Catholics, they're obsessed with like women being virgins. And that's actually a really empowering idea and a beautiful idea that women are not just valued for our motherhood. We're not, the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, and when
baby machines.
When you say motherhood, just to be clear to our listeners, because I don't like the phrase "just a mother," because being a mother is this huge thing, and there's no such thing as just a mother. But what you're saying is to treat a woman as like a utilitarian subject, objectifying her physical motherhood. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
That's a good clarification. Well, and I think just, the Handmaid's Tale books and shows and stuff, there's this secular concern that women in history have been valued basically just for their ability to, biologically carry babies. And I love how this document talks about, the emphasis on virginity by the church was really such a feminist, these are my words, but it sort of has this like a feminist, an empowering idea that women are valued just for being human. That necessity of biological motherhood is not at all the sum of what it means to be a woman.
Yeah, and I like how the document kind of lays out that the biological difference this is theology of the body, right? The biological difference then is a sign of the crucial personality difference. So we have this personality difference between men and women, a masculine personality, a feminine personality that's not unequal. They're equal in dignity, but they're different and they're beautiful. And original sin, just to take us into the narrative of our life, has ruined that. And there needs to be, I was really appreciating that Joseph Ratzinger was saying that there's healing that needs to happen, and let's start having conversations about what that healing looks like, because ever since the fall there has been this objectification on both sides.
Yeah, no, I love in this document and others that the church, the popes and church leaders acknowledge that women have been oppressed. I think that's something a lot of Catholics don't realize, is that the popes have spoken about this and written about this, that in the world, because of sin in the world, the problem that many secular feminists have identified, that women have been oppressed and treated unequally, is truly a problem in the world, and it is the result of the fall. And that's where I think Catholicism has such an important piece of the puzzle, because that needs to be healed. And what does Jesus do but heal? And that's where our faith, I think, has sort of the forward direction of, okay, so how do we heal that?
Right. I love I love how not defensive, I guess, what, in other words, I'm saying the faithfulness of John Paul II, because he apologizes for all of these things in history, whether it's the church has been part of that oppression or not. He's so apologetic about wherever humans in the church have like fallen short of her own ideals in such a like non-defensive way. But he's like, here's the reality of what's happened. But here within the church herself, there's also the actual efficacious instrument and means to heal that brokenness that began centuries. And so let's go ahead and, like you said, start to steward and facilitate that. And part of that healing is going to include, in a more radical way in the modern world, women themselves. And so there needs to be this cultivation of the feminine genius. So that, yeah, it's just, I like what you said in the beginning about, there's impressions about what the church teaches. There's certainly like church culture based on, depending on like where you're living. We were talking about this in my, at Endow yesterday, actually. In fact, just like, Denver Catholicism looks different than Phoenix Catholicism, looks different than Los Angeles Catholicism, but that in all those areas, like the feminine genius is so needed to steward the kind of healing that we need now with all of the different cultural challenges.
Yeah. Well, and I love how Ratzinger in this document talks about like these feminine values are not just for women, because I think that sometimes we take on in a kind of cultural way this idea that men's expertise is for men and women, but that women's expertise is only for women.
Yes.
And Ratzinger basically, stomps his foot on that and says Yeah, that these feminine values, like the feminine body, God is revealed in, he quotes the Catechism. I love this quote from the Catechism that, it's man and woman together that reveal the image of God. And so
Yep.
absolutely men have a particular sort of piece of the puzzle and charism. And I think you use the word personality, but that men reveal a certain aspect and form of God, but so do women. And I think that's where sometimes the church has fallen a little bit into, we're not immune of the sins of the world. And I think sometimes we have failed to recognize women's expertise and women's value and the way that women approach things, the way that women might think about things, or there's just a lot to be revered about
Yes.
women and like you said, the feminine genius.
Yeah, absolutely. I just recorded a podcast with my friend Bill, who, when I was telling him about Endow, I mean, we weren't planning on recording a podcast together, but we ended up recording one because we were at lunch, and I told him, our Endow's foundational document is, along with Letter to Women, Mulieris Dignitatum, John Paul II's document on the nature and dignity of women. And he goes, oh, I read that almost immediately after it came out. And I said, oh, that's cool. He said, yeah, it was life-changing for me. He's like, I don't think that document was written for women. Women know women. That document was written for men. Men need to read that document, because he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, like, I'm a good, respectful Catholic husband, wife, and father. But until I read that document, I don't think I appreciated my wife and my children and my daughters as much as I should have been. And it changed me, and it changed how I looked at my wife and my daughters and women in my life. And I started to take them seriously in a way that I hadn't before. So
yeah, well, and that's so important, because I think that, like, Jesus shows us in many ways in the Bible that how seriously that he took women, and he entrusted women with particular missions and truths and
right.
and callings. And I think that the church at large needs to reflect on, like, are we living that out well? Are we truly witnessing to the fact that it's men and women together who reveal
Right.
God, in all places and spaces. And I'm very clear that, Femme Catholic and all of our work, we're trying to highlight the expertise of women. We are totally pro church teaching, and a lot of women's groups in the past have pushed for women's ordination, and we're not at all advocating for that. And in fact,
Yeah.
I think the push for women's ordination just takes away from the real conversation, which is women don't need to imitate men.
Right.
And this document talks about that a little bit, that, societally, that's been the push for women to imitate men and to be equalized through just copying men,
which is so anti-women.
Yes. Well, and I think that, this document talks about that. But in order to truly witness to that, I think what the church needs to do is to model it for society and say, this is what it looks like to value and uphold the expertise of women, and to celebrate the insights that only women can give, and to celebrate and care for, women's bodies and the ways that those are different than men. And I think that's the particular mission of the church in the world.
Yeah. And I love how this is in your own unique feminine genius. I think it's incredible to me that in your own story, in your own conversion, in your own, personal vocation, that is exactly what you've been working toward, is to have those conversations and to form women, to create a space for them to actually encounter these questions in what is a very challenging culture and challenging society, but to take it seriously and to not hide from it.
Well, because I think the danger is, the society has sort of said, well, we don't really know what my 5-month-old has a lot of opinions on this. She's named, Catherine Edith after Edith Stein. So maybe
nice.
But I think secular society, there's a lot of people who would say, well, we see the vulnerability in women's bodies. We see how women have been oppressed. We need to, they have a sense that equality is important between the sexes. So they say, well, let's, bring women into all of the spaces and ways that men have been, and pursue equality that way. They sort of don't have the code to like decode the body, right? The theology of the body. The church has that. And so I think we need to witness to it and really explore, because otherwise I think that even Catholic women can just be tempted to say, well, I guess, maybe my body doesn't reveal anything about me, or the fact that I'm a woman is not significant. Or even worse is the fact that, differentiating by sex and gender is bad and harmful to women. I think that's the conclusion that the largely secular society has had, because they don't sort of have that decoder to understand the value of women. But I don't know, we're gonna lose the presence of what God is trying to reveal to us if we don't, uphold it and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this is a short podcast, but we have baby Catherine with us, who is demanding her own attention. So cute. For those for those watching on the YouTube channel, so adorable. She's smiling right now. This document is pretty short. It's like less than 13 pages. So Samantha, who should read this? Who do you think should read this document?
I think women should read it, because it will affirm, I think, their experience of the world, and hopefully all the ways in which the church sees their value. But I like your friend said, I think men should read it too, and to realize that we need to search our own hearts and search our own, organizations, or like it's not uncommon to see big theological conferences where there are few or no women speakers. There are few or no, or look around your parish council, and sometimes there are plenty of women involved, and we need both. So then in other spaces where there's not men, we should be asking those questions too. But I think we can all look around and say, in order for the image of God to be reflected well, we need that diversity.
Yeah, and I don't think it means like, oh, we have to have exactly 5 men and 5 women. Like,
no.
Again, it doesn't have, not that. That's I just don't want anyone listening to think that's what we're saying. I think the larger question is, in your particular areas, to look at the human person in front of you, to recognize their dignity, whether male or female, and to really listen. And in a particular way, listen to women, especially in the sense of, because oftentimes, because the feminine personality is different than the masculine personality, they're often has a greater temptation, I'll be careful, a greater temptation perhaps to be overlooked. So.
Yeah. And I think, this document even says, on a more concrete level of social policies and in the areas of education, work, family, services, civic participation must combat all unjust sexual discrimination. They must listen to the aspirations and the needs of all. And, like this is Ratzinger, writing this, JP2 upholding it, like this is coming from the church. And so I think it does us well this was written years ago, but just to really examine these things and read what the popes are writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that line. There's so many good lines in there, as you noted, but I love that line. They learn to love as much as they are loved. So, as much as I'm able to, within myself, do the uncomfortable work of allowing myself to be loved by God, by others, that I'm growing then in my capacity to really be attentive to the other, to the human person, which, as we know, the feminine genius is that particular capacity to the other, as JP2 would say, and Moliere student taught to him, right? This grand and capacity to pay attention to the other. So anyways, Samantha, thank you so much for doing this podcast, short and sweet. And everybody check out Femme Catholic if you haven't already. Thanks so much for your work in the church and the world. And Endow is praying for you. Please pray for Endow. Any final thoughts?
Thank you so much. No, we're trying to, our work at Femme Catholic, we're trying to tease this out and really explore what does this look like on the ground and in real life. And we have a weekly newsletter called The Insight that folks can sign up for if they're interested in that. Comes out every Friday, femcatholic.com/insight.
All right. Well, I will link it to this episode. Thank you, Samantha.
Awesome. Thank you.